What if the limits you think you have are actually just illusions created by your brain? What if you could run farther, push harder, and achieve more than you ever imagined possible? What if your greatest opponent is not your body, but your mind? Alex Hutchinson, a former national team runner for Canada and Cambridge-trained physicist, spent 8 years researching human endurance to write this New York Times bestseller. With a foreword by Malcolm Gladwell, this book reveals a decade of paradigm-shifting research suggesting that seemingly physical barriers you encounter are set as much by your brain as by your body. This matters because understanding that your limits are elastic, not fixed, changes everything about what you think you can achieve. Hutchinson had exclusive access to Nike Breaking 2 project, where scientists attempted to help Eliud Kipchoge break the 2-hour marathon barrier. Through compelling stories of polar explorers, deep-sea freedivers, ultramarathoners, and everyday athletes, combined with cutting-edge neuroscience, he shows that endurance is the struggle to continue against a mounting desire to stop, and the mind is the new frontier, the central governor theory that changed everything. For over a century, exercise scientists believed limits were purely physical. Your muscles run out of oxygen, lactate builds up, glycogen depletes. Your heart cannot pump fast enough. Then, in the late 1990s, South African physiologist Tim Noakes proposed something revolutionary: the central governor theory. Your brain imposes limits before your body actually fails, protecting you from catastrophic damage. The brain acts as a dimmer switch, regulating how hard you can push by controlling muscle recruitment and effort perception. Noakes noticed something curious. At the end of marathons, second-place finishers often sprint around the track, waving flags. If they were truly physically exhausted, that final surge would be impossible. The brain was clearly holding back reserves. In almost every endurance event, athletes have a finishing kick, suddenly finding energy they swore they did not have moments earlier. This suggests the brain anticipates danger and enforces conservative pacing to protect bodily systems, even when those systems still have capacity. An ultrarunner named Diane Van Dieren had part of her temporal cortex removed during surgery for epilepsy. This impaired her sense of time and interpretation of fatigue. After surgery, she went on to set multiple ultra-running records. Without the brain region that normally calculates effort and time remaining, her central governor could not properly regulate her effort. She pushed closer to true physical limits than most people ever reach. Research from Samuel Marcora offers a complementary perspective called the psychobiological model. Rather than an unconscious governor, Marcora argues that perceived effort is the final arbiter. Physical cues like tired muscles and dehydration contribute to perceived effort, but psychological factors play equally important roles. Motivation, beliefs, emotions, mental fatigue, and even subliminal messages affect how hard exercise feels, independent of actual physical state. The revolutionary Breaking 2 project. Nike assembled world-class scientists for an audacious goal: help someone run a marathon in under 2 hours. The official world record at the time was 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 57 seconds. Breaking 2 hours seemed physically impossible. Hutchinson received rare access to witness the months of preparation and the actual attempt in Monza, Italy in May 2017. The scientists optimized everything: aerodynamic drafting from pacers, custom shoes, ideal weather, perfect flat course, carbohydrate delivery systems, and psychological strategies. Eliud Kipchoge, already considered the greatest marathoner alive, would attempt what seemed impossible. The preparation involved analyzing every physiological system: oxygen utilization, lactate clearance, fueling efficiency, biomechanics, and crucially, mental fortitude. The scientists knew the physical preparation alone would not be enough. The mental component, the ability to maintain excruciating pace when every signal screams to slow down, would determine success or failure. On race day, Kipchoge executed flawlessly. Mile after mile, he held pace that felt impossible to sustain. His face remained eerily calm, even as his body performed at limits few humans ever reach. He crossed the finish line in 2 hours, 0 minutes, and 25 seconds. So close, 25 seconds short. Yet he had shattered the official world record by over 2.5 minutes. More importantly, he proved that what seemed impossible was nearly achievable. 2 years later, in Vienna, Kipchoge finally broke the 2-hour barrier with a time of 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 40 seconds, though under slightly different conditions. The Breaking 2 project illustrated Hutchinson's central thesis: limits are elastic. When scientists optimize every variable and an athlete believes success is possible, performance reaches new levels. The barrier is not purely physical. It is psychophysical, a delicate dance between body capabilities and brain permission. Pain is not what you think it is. Pain during endurance events is not damage. It is a protective signal, an alarm system warning you to be careful. But alarms can be false. Your brain generates pain based on its assessment of danger, which can be wildly inaccurate. This means pain can be influenced by beliefs, context, and psychological state. Understanding this distinction between pain and actual injury is liberating. Josh Cox, an American distance runner, said about the Comrades Ultramarathon, "The one guarantee in an event like this is the pain. You have to welcome it." Say here you are, my friend. Elite endurance athletes do not have superhuman pain tolerance. Research shows they train their pain tolerance through repeated exposure to high-intensity efforts. The more you experience pain in training, the higher your pain threshold becomes. This is good news for everyone. Pain tolerance is trainable, not fixed. Hutchinson explores studies showing that athletes who smile during intense efforts actually perform better. Smiling sends feedback to the brain, suggesting everything is okay, reducing perceived threat and allowing higher output. Other studies found that clenching your jaw increases perceived effort, while consciously relaxing your face makes exercise feel easier without changing actual workload. These subconscious tricks access reserves you did not know you had. A runner hitting the wall at mile 20 of a marathon feels overwhelming urge to slow down or stop. The pain is real. But if that same runner sees their family cheering, or realizes they are close to a personal record, or remembers why they trained so hard, suddenly they find another gear. The physical state has not changed, but the brain recalculates acceptable risk based on new motivation. Pain becomes manageable when meaning outweighs discomfort. Oxygen limits are more flexible than you think. VO2 max, the maximum rate your body can consume. Oxygen has long been considered the gold standard predictor of endurance performance. More oxygen to muscles means more aerobic energy production. Elite endurance athletes have extraordinarily high VO2 max values. But Hutchinson reveals the relationship is more complex than previously understood. Athletes with lower VO2 max sometimes outperform those with higher values. Efficiency matters as much as capacity. Stefan Mifsud, a freediver, held his breath underwater for 11 minutes and 35 seconds. The average person struggles beyond 2 minutes. His lungs did not magically hold more oxygen. His brain learned to tolerate carbon dioxide buildup and oxygen deprivation that would cause most people to panic and surface. He trained his central governor to delay the overwhelming urge to breathe, pushing closer to actual physiological limits. High-altitude mountaineers on Everest function in the death zone, where oxygen is 1/3 that at sea level. Conventional wisdom said this was barely enough to sustain life, let alone climb. Yet climbers summit without supplemental oxygen. Their brains adapt to extreme hypoxia, allowing function under conditions that would incapacitate untrained individuals. The adaptation is partly physical, but significantly mental. Learning to operate under distress that feels unbearable initially. Research shows that simply believing you are getting more oxygen improves performance, even when oxygen levels are unchanged. In studies where athletes received placebo oxygen enrichment, Their performance improved based purely on belief. The expectation changed perceived effort and allowed higher output. Your brain gates oxygen utilization based on its model of danger, not just actual oxygen availability. Heat, thirst, and the limits they impose. Heat stress pushes endurance to the brink. Your core temperature rises during intense exercise, and when it reaches dangerous levels, the brain enforces slowdown to prevent organ damage. Or so scientists thought. Hutchinson reveals research showing that core temperature can vary significantly at the point of voluntary exhaustion. Sometimes athletes stop with relatively modest temperature elevation. Other times, in high motivation situations, core temperatures reach levels previously considered incompatible with continued effort. Pre-cooling strategies help. Taking a cold shower before a hot race lowers starting core temperature, providing buffer before reaching danger zone. But even more effective are psychological strategies. Athletes who replace negative self-talk like "I am boiling" with positive statements like "keep pushing," "you are doing so well, tolerate heat better." The physical heat stress has not changed, but the mental interpretation has. Thirst and dehydration present similar complexity. Traditional guidance insisted on drinking to prevent even modest dehydration. Tim Noakes' research showed this advice was overblown and sometimes dangerous, leading to dangerous overhydration. Moderate dehydration during endurance events is normal and not performance-limiting for most people. The sensation of thirst is another protective signal that can be overridden when necessary. Ultramarathoners running 100-mile races often lose significant body weight through sweat, sometimes becoming moderately dehydrated, yet they continue running for 20-plus hours. Their brains allow this because the goal justifies the temporary discomfort. In contrast, someone doing a casual jog might stop after mild thirst. The difference is not physical capacity, but mental override based on motivation. Fuel, glycogen, and the bonk. The marathon bonk, hitting the wall around mile 20, is legendary. It happens when glycogen stores deplete, forcing the body to rely more heavily on fat metabolism, which cannot sustain the same intensity. Or that is the traditional explanation. Hutchinson shows reality is more nuanced. Athletes bonk at different points depending on pacing, fueling strategy, training adaptation, and crucially, mental state. Carbohydrate loading and in-race fueling can extend glycogen availability. New research shows combining glucose and fructose allows absorption of up to 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour, rather than the previously thought ceiling of 60 grams. This extra fuel significantly delays glycogen depletion. But even with perfect fueling, some athletes bonk while others do not, suggesting mental factors modulate how the body manages fuel stores. Ketogenic diets, which train the body to rely predominantly on fat metabolism, have intrigued endurance athletes. Some ultra-endurance athletes adopt keto diets and report never experiencing bonks, since they do not rely on limited glycogen stores. However, research shows that while fat metabolism improves, top-end intensity often suffers. The brain and body perform certain high-intensity efforts more efficiently with carbohydrate fuel. The cruel metabolic demands of the marathon inevitably deplete readily available fuel, meaning most people slow in final miles. Yet with the right incentive, some speed up. Only the brain can respond to abstract incentives like braking for hours for an arbitrary distance like 26.2 miles. The brain allocates remaining fuel based on importance of the goal, not just physical availability. Brain training and mental resilience. If the brain is the primary limiter, can you train it like you train muscles? Hutchinson explores emerging brain training techniques. Mental fatigue studies show that cognitive tasks before exercise impair endurance performance. Your brain has finite resources. Dealing with stress, anxiety, or demanding mental work before athletic effort leaves less capacity for managing physical discomfort. This is why athletes perform worse when emotionally or mentally drained from other life areas. But you can build mental resilience. Mindfulness practices help soldiers avoid PTSD by teaching them to observe discomfort without catastrophizing. Endurance athletes use similar techniques, noticing pain and fatigue without letting it dictate decisions. This metacognitive awareness, observing your own thoughts and sensations with detachment, creates space between stimulus and response. You feel pain, but choose how much it affects your performance. Brain doping is another frontier. Transcranial direct current stimulation, applying small electrical currents to specific brain regions, has shown promise in reducing perceived effort and extending time to exhaustion. The technology is still experimental and effectiveness varies, but it represents the logical extension of viewing the brain as the primary performance limiter. If you can alter brain activity, you can alter limits. Self-talk research shows that even simple interventions work. Athletes who practice positive self-talk statements during training tolerate discomfort better in competition. The content matters less than the habit of directing your internal dialogue rather than letting it run wild. Negative thoughts amplify perceived effort. Neutral or positive thoughts dampen it. The power to choose your mental response to physical sensations is trainable. The lessons for everyone. You do not have to be an elite athlete for these insights to matter. Every difficult project, challenging exam, demanding work deadline, or long day of physical labor tests endurance. The capacity to continue against mounting desire to stop applies universally. Understanding that your limits are negotiable, that your brain often quits before your body truly needs to, empowers you to push slightly harder in all areas of life. The key is calibration. Ignoring all signals and pushing recklessly leads to injury or burnout. But most people quit far short of actual limits, stopped by discomfort rather than incapacity. Learning to distinguish between the two, recognizing when you can safely push a bit more, unlocks hidden reserves. Small incremental improvements compound over time into major gains. Hutchinson emphasizes that hacking the central governor is harder than quick-fix tips suggest. There is no simple 7-step program to reset your limits overnight, but consistent application of these principles. Understanding that perceived effort can be influenced by beliefs, motivation, and mental techniques does make a measurable difference. You can go farther than you think. The horizons of your performance are more elastic than you imagined. Your challenge: you now understand that limits are not fixed walls, but elastic boundaries that can be pushed. Your brain protects you by enforcing conservative estimates of what you can handle. But protection comes with cost. Your brain stops you from accessing your full potential. The question is whether you will test these boundaries. Your challenge is simple but transformative. The next time you encounter a moment where you want to quit, whether in exercise, work, study, or any demanding task, pause and ask yourself this question: am I actually incapable of continuing, or does my brain simply prefer to stop? Push just 10% further than your instinct suggests. Not recklessly, but intentionally testing whether the limit you feel is real or negotiable. Track what happens. You will likely discover you had more in reserve than you thought. That discovery is powerful. It teaches you that discomfort is not emergency. That pain is not always injury. Fatigue is not always failure. These lessons accumulate. Each time you push slightly past perceived limits and survive, your brain recalibrates what is possible. Your limits expand. Your resilience deepens. Your performance improves. Hutchinson spent 8 years researching these questions and concluded that while we may never fully control our limits, understanding their elastic nature changes what we attempt and achieve. The difference between someone who reaches their potential and someone who does not is often just willingness to continue against mounting discomfort. You have that capacity. Use it. Thank you for watching. If this video changed how you think about your limits and what you are capable of achieving, subscribe to our channel for more transformative book summaries. Visit our channel for more books on performance, psychology, and human potential. Your greatest limits are in your mind. It is time to expand them.